He is dead. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran, the man who held near total power over one of the most strategically significant nations in the world for nearly 4 decades, is dead. Iranian state media confirmed it. The White House confirmed it. President Trump posted it on Truth Social, calling Khamenei one of the most evil people in history and saying his killing was justice. Let that land for a moment, because this is not a normal news event. This is not a cabinet reshuffling or a congressional vote or a diplomatic statement. This is the kind of moment that historians mark as a before and after, the kind of moment where the map of a region, and potentially of the world, shifts in ways that take years to fully understand. Khamenei came to power in 1989. Think about how long ago that was. The Berlin Wall had just fallen. The Cold War was ending. The internet did not exist as a public tool. And from that year until this morning, one man held ultimate authority over the Iranian state, over its military, its judiciary, its nuclear program, its foreign policy, its proxy armies across the Middle East, and the daily lives of nearly 90 million people. Now he is gone. And the question that every intelligence analyst, every diplomat, every government in the world is asking right now, the question that has no clear answer, is what comes next. This is one of those moments where the news moves so fast that most people will spend the next 48 hours confused, overwhelmed, and not sure what to believe or who to trust. Senate Decode exists for exactly this moment. We are going to break down everything: who Khamenei was, how Iran actually works, who could replace him, what the succession process looks like, and what the experts are saying about what comes next. In plain English, without the spin. Hit subscribe right now, because this story is going to develop for weeks, and you want to understand every chapter of it as it unfolds. Let's get into it. Before we can understand what his death means, we need to understand who Khamenei actually was, because the American media tends to reduce him to a symbol: the turban, the portrait, the chance of death to America, and symbols don't tell you much about the substance of power. Ali Hosseini Khamenei was 86 years old at the time of his death. He had been the supreme leader of Iran since 1989, 37 years. To put that in perspective, he outlasted 6 American presidents. He was in power before most of the people watching this video were born. He was not always the obvious choice for the role. When Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, the founder of the Islamic Republic, the man who led the 1979 revolution that overthrew the American-backed Shah, died in 1989, Khamenei was a relatively mid-level cleric. He did not have the highest religious credentials. He was not considered the most theologically qualified candidate for the supreme leadership, but he was politically shrewd. He had been close to Khomeini. He had served 2 terms as president, and in the urgent, chaotic days following Khomeini's death, he outmaneuvered the other candidates and was chosen by the Assembly of Experts, the clerical body that selects Iran's supreme leader, to take the role. And then he held it for nearly 4 decades. What did that power actually look like in practice? As supreme leader, Khamenei had final authority over everything that mattered in Iran: the military, including the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, which is Iran's most powerful military and intelligence organization, the judiciary, state media, the nuclear program, foreign policy, the ability to veto election candidates, the ability to override the elected president on any issue he chose. He used all of it. He oversaw the brutal crackdown on the 2009 Green Movement protests. He sanctioned the shooting of protesters in the streets during the 2019 uprising. He presided over the arrest, torture, and execution of dissidents, journalists, and activists. He defended the death to America chants even during the brief period of relative diplomatic warmth during the Obama nuclear negotiations. He built the Axis of Resistance, the network of Iranian proxy forces across the Middle East that includes Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, the Houthis in Yemen, and armed militias in Iraq and Syria. He oversaw the development of Iran's ballistic missile program. He made the strategic decisions that turned Iran into what the United States has consistently designated as the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism. And now, as of today, he is dead. Let's be precise about what happened, because the details matter. Operation Epic Fury, the joint U.S.-Israel military strike launched in the early hours of Saturday, February 28, 2026, targeted Iranian military infrastructure across multiple cities: Tehran, Isfahan, Qom, Karaj, Kermanshah. Among the targets was Khamenei's compound in downtown Tehran. The Associated Press reported that the first apparent strike hit near his offices. Satellite imagery obtained by the New York Times showed the compound had been entirely destroyed. For hours, his fate was uncertain. His own foreign minister told NBC News he was alive, as far as I know. Reuters reported he had been moved to a secure location. Israeli television reported he had likely been killed. Then the confirmation came. Iranian state media, the regime's own official media apparatus, confirmed that Khamenei had been killed in the strikes. He was at his office within his residence at the time of the attack, according to Iran's Fars news agency. The White House confirmed it. Trump posted on Truth Social that Khamenei was unable to avoid our intelligence and highly sophisticated tracking systems. a statement that appeared to confirm the United States played a direct role in tracking and targeting the supreme leader. He also wrote, "This is the single greatest chance for the Iranian people to take back their country." And he called Khamenei's killing justice for Americans and others who had been killed by Iran over the decades. The reaction from ordinary Iranians, at least the ones visible on social media and in reports from journalists on the ground, was striking. People taking to the streets, horns honking, celebrations, chants of death to Khamenei. An Iranian engineer now living in the United States told CNBC, "Khamenei is dead. This is the best day of my life." That reaction tells you something important about the gap between a regime and its people, and it is something we will return to. Here is the question that every government in the world is trying to answer right now, and the honest answer is nobody is completely sure. Here is what we know about how Iran's succession process is supposed to work according to the country's constitution. Iran's supreme leader is selected by the Assembly of Experts, an 88-member body of senior clerics who are elected by the Iranian public every 8 years. When the supreme leader dies or is removed from office, the Assembly of Experts is supposed to convene as soon as possible and select a successor. In the interim, while the assembly deliberates, Iran's constitution mandates that a temporary leadership council takes over. That council consists of 3 members: the president, the head of the judiciary, and a senior cleric from the Guardian Council. Iran has already activated that process. A provisional leadership council has been named, consisting of President Masoud Pezeshkian, Supreme Court Chief Justice Gholam Hossein Mohseni Ejei, and Ayatollah Alireza Arafi, a 67-year-old cleric from the Guardian Council. Arafi was formally appointed to the council on Sunday, so Iran has a functioning, if temporary, leadership structure in place right now. But here is why the succession question is so much more complicated than it might appear on paper. This is only the second time in the history of the Islamic Republic that a supreme leader has died in office. The first time was in 1989 when Khamenei died, and the transition to Khamenei happened quickly but under chaotic conditions. The entire clerical establishment has essentially no institutional memory of how to do this. On top of that, Khamenei never publicly named a successor. He reportedly told the Assembly of Experts that the selection must be made based on truth, the need of the country, and God, without regard for expediency. He did not discuss replacements publicly, and several of the senior leaders who might have guided the process have been killed in the same strikes that killed Khamenei. His top security advisor, Ali Shamkhani, was killed. IRGC Commander-in-Chief Mohammad Pakpour was killed. This is a leadership vacuum in the middle of an active war. Let's walk through the people whose names are circulating as potential successors, because understanding who they are tells you a lot about what kind of Iran might emerge from this crisis. Mojtaba is 56 years old. He is Ali Khamenei's second son. He has never held public office, has no senior religious credentials, and has operated entirely behind the scenes, but he is widely believed to have enormous influence, particularly within the IRGC and the Basij paramilitary force. There is a significant problem with his candidacy, however. Father-to-son succession is deeply frowned upon in Shia Islamic tradition and is particularly fraught in a revolutionary republic that came into existence by overthrowing a monarchy. Elevating Mojtaba would look uncomfortably like establishing a dynasty, exactly the kind of thing the 1979 revolution was supposed to have ended. Reports from mid-2025 suggested the Assembly of Experts had quietly excluded him from their confidential shortlist, but other sources say he remains in contention, particularly because of his IRGC connections. And in a war situation, the IRGC's backing may matter more than formal religious credentials. Hassan Khomeini is 54 years old. He is the grandson of Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, the man who founded the Islamic Republic. He is the custodian of his grandfather's mausoleum in Tehran. The symbolic legitimacy of the Khomeini name is enormous. In a moment of crisis and uncertainty, choosing a successor who literally carries the founder's bloodline and name would be a powerful statement of continuity. But Hassan Khomeini is considered a reformist. He has relatively moderate views compared to the hardline establishment. He was barred from running for the Assembly of Experts in 2016, a signal that the conservative clerical establishment was uncomfortable with his political leanings. He is considered an outsider to the regime's power structures despite his family name. Arafi is 67 years old. He is already on the Provisional Leadership Council, which gives him immediate visibility and relevance. He is an established cleric, a confidant of Khamenei, deputy chairman of the Assembly of Experts, head of Iran's seminary system, and a member of the Guardian Council. He is described as tech-savvy, fluent in Arabic and English, and the author of 24 books, but he is not considered a political heavyweight and does not have strong ties to the security establishment, a significant liability in a moment when the IRGC's backing is essential. Ali Larijani is a former Speaker of Parliament who Khamenei recently appointed as head of the Supreme National Security Council. With much of the senior leadership killed in the strikes, Larijani has emerged as one of the most senior civilian officials still standing. He has already posted publicly on X, vowing that Iran would deliver an unforgettable lesson to Israel and the United States. His profile is rising rapidly in this vacuum. Now, here is where I need to say something that is going to be uncomfortable for some viewers, because there is a narrative building in Washington, in media coverage, in the social media celebration, that Khamenei's death equals regime change equals a free Iran. And the experts are warning that this is dangerously simplistic. The Council on Foreign Relations, one of the most respected foreign policy institutions in the United States, put it plainly in a statement following Khamenei's death. They wrote that the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps is the regime, not Khamenei personally, not the clerical establishment, the IRGC. One analyst framed it this way, and I want you to really hear this analogy. Killing Khamenei is not in itself regime change. Think of it as changing a light bulb. To change it, you must first remove the broken bulb that was there, but doing so is not changing the bulb. That requires replacing it with a new one. The IRGC is a military and economic empire. It controls vast commercial interests across Iran. It has its own intelligence apparatus, its own command structure, its own political interests. It has been described by multiple analysts as having already functionally replaced Khamenei in key decision-making processes, particularly after the stress of last year's 12-day war with Israel. The IRGC does not need a supreme leader to function. It has its own internal logic, its own institutional inertia, its own survival instinct. Any successor, and whoever the Assembly of Experts ultimately selects, will almost certainly require the IRGC's backing to govern effectively. And the IRGC's primary interest is not the freedom of the Iranian people. It is the preservation of its own power. That is the cold reality that sits underneath the celebrations. Iran's opposition in exile is also, by every account, deeply fragmented. There is no unified movement waiting in the wings. There is no government in exile with a clear democratic mandate. There are various factions: monarchists who support the return of the Pahlavi dynasty, various reformist movements, diaspora activists, but they do not agree with each other, and none of them have the organized, on-the-ground infrastructure to fill a power vacuum in a country of nearly 90 million people that is simultaneously under military bombardment. The Council on Foreign Relations identified 3 possible trajectories for Iran following Khamenei's death: regime continuity, essentially Khameneism without Khamenei, military takeover by the IRGC, or regime collapse. And the CFR warned that none of these near-term scenarios envisage a positive transformation in the year or so following the transition. That is a sobering assessment, and it is one that deserves to be heard clearly amid all the celebration. Let's be honest about what the Trump administration is gambling on here, because the stakes are enormous and the bet is real. Trump and Netanyahu have stated clearly that the goal of Operation Epic Fury is regime change in Iran. They are betting that the combination of military pressure, destroying Iran's missile program, killing its leadership, decimating the IRGC, and the political pressure of a population that genuinely despises the regime will produce a democratic transition. Trump told NBC News after Khamenei's death that the attacks had inflicted tremendous damage, and added, with what he described as only a little sarcasm, that at some point Iran would be calling him to ask who he would like as their new leader. He is betting that the Iranian people, given this opening, will do what he asked them to do in his 2:30 a.m. Truth Social video, take over their government. He may be right. The celebrations on the streets of Tehran are real. The decades of repression are real. The hunger for change is real. An Iranian engineer now living in the United States spoke for millions of people in the diaspora when he said this was the best day of his life. But here is what history says about this kind of bet. The United States has tried to engineer political transitions in the Middle East before. In Iraq, the removal of Saddam Hussein was supposed to create a democratic opening. The democratic opening came, and then came civil war, sectarian violence, the rise of ISIS, and a long, bloody, expensive conflict that changed the calculations of American foreign policy for a generation. In Libya, the removal of Muammar Gaddafi was supposed to create stability. It created a failed state that became a base for armed militias and terrorist organizations. CNN's analysis of this moment put it plainly: the best day for the United States in recent wars in Afghanistan and Iraq has come early in a conflict where the massive, overwhelming advantage of U.S. military force looks decisive. The question is, what comes after that early, decisive moment? And right now, with the bombing campaign continuing and the succession process underway, and the IRGC still intact and the Iranian opposition still fragmented, that question does not have a clear answer. Back in Washington, the death of Khamenei is reshaping the political debate in real time. House Intelligence Committee Chairman Rick Crawford, Republican of Arkansas, one of the most senior intelligence officials in Congress, went on Fox News to analyze what he called the death's implications for securing the homeland. His appearance was a signal that at least some of the key players with access to classified intelligence believe this is a development that strengthens American national security, not one that creates new dangers. But the opposition is not going away. The War Powers Resolution introduced by Representative Thomas Massie and Representative Ro Khanna is still moving forward. House Democrats are still pushing for a vote. The constitutional questions about congressional authorization have not been resolved by Khamenei's death. If anything, they have become more urgent because if the operation is expanding and continuing, the question of who authorized it and under what legal framework becomes more pressing, not less. And several Democratic members of Congress, including House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, have pointedly noted that killing a leader is not the same as having a plan, that the moment of apparent military success is precisely the moment when the absence of a strategic endgame becomes most dangerous. Iran has announced 40 days of national mourning following Khamenei's death. It has also vowed to continue its retaliatory strikes against Israel and American military positions across the Middle East. Tehran targeted more sites in Gulf countries on Sunday, even as the Provisional Leadership Council was being assembled. A regime in mourning and a regime in retaliation can coexist. And that combination, leadership vacuum plus ongoing military retaliation, is exactly the kind of unpredictable situation that the critics of the operation warned about. Let me bring this all the way home. What happened today is genuinely historic. There is no other word for it. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei ruled Iran for nearly 37 years. He was only the second supreme leader in the history of the Islamic Republic. He shaped the Middle East, funded proxy wars, pursued nuclear weapons, and presided over the repression of tens of millions of people with an iron fist. He is gone. And whether you believe that is justice, as Trump said, or a massive geopolitical gamble with consequences we cannot yet predict, the reality is the same. Iran is now in a succession crisis, the second ever in its history, the first one to happen during an active war, the first one to happen while American and Israeli bombs are still falling. A provisional leadership council is in place. The Assembly of Experts needs to select a permanent successor. The IRGC is still intact and still the most powerful institution in the country. The Iranian opposition is still fragmented. The bombing campaign is continuing. The retaliation is continuing. And the whole world is watching to see whether Trump's bet that the Iranian people will seize this moment turns out to be the call that changed the Middle East forever or the opening chapter of a much longer and costlier story. Nobody knows yet, but here is what I know. The American citizens who are watching this unfold deserve to understand it fully. Not just the headline, not just the celebration or the condemnation, the full picture, the history, the succession process, the IRGC's role, the warnings from the experts, the distance between killing a leader and achieving regime change, all of it. Because the decisions that get made in the coming days and weeks by the Trump administration, by Congress, by the provisional leadership of Iran, by the IRGC, are going to shape this region for decades. And an informed American public is the only real check on decisions made behind closed doors at Mar-a-Lago or anywhere else. That is what we are here for, every single week. If this video helped you understand what is happening, share it right now. Send it to someone who is trying to make sense of the most consequential news day in years. Drop a comment. Tell me what question you still need answered, because I want to know. And if you are not subscribed yet, this is the moment, because we are going to be covering every development in this story as it unfolds. The succession process, the congressional battle, the military situation on the ground, the future of Iran. You don't want to miss any of it. This is Senate Decode. History is happening right now. I'll see you in the next one.